Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah, great to be here.
Today we're looking at something that's got everyone buzzing.
Yeah.
Elon Musk's potential influence with Trump back in the White House.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot to unpack there.
So Trump's put Musk in charge of this new department.
Right.
The Department of Government Efficiency.
Uh-huh.
They're calling it DOGE.
Catchy.
Yeah, I mean, the name itself is kind of raising eyebrows, right?
It is pretty interesting, and their goals for it are even more interesting.
What are they planning to do with it?
Well, they're aiming to streamline everything, cut through red tape, slash those budgets.
Basically just shrink the government.
Yeah, make it more efficient.
Okay, and Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy say they can cut trillions.
Yeah, trillions from the federal budget.
Trillions.
That's what they're saying.
I got to say, I'm a little skeptical.
Understandable.
I mean, the federal budget is massive. Where are they even going to find these trillions in savings?
Well, if you look at the 2023 budget, for example, it was something like $6.1 trillion. Most of it goes to things like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid.
Right.
And then you've got defense spending and a whole bunch of other programs.
So where's the fat to trim?
Well, they're talking about eliminating regulations.
Okay.
The ones that they see as unnecessary, you know.
Uh-huh.
And they also want to audit agencies like the Pentagon.
Okay.
And they've mentioned cutting funding to organizations like the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Planned Parenthood.
Exactly. So basically targeting those programs that they consider inefficient or unnecessary.
Yeah, that's definitely going to stir up some controversy.
Oh, absolutely.
But let's bring it back to Musk for a second.
Sure.
How could all of this impact his companies?
Well, that's a big question.
I mean, he's had his fair share of tangles with regulators.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you think about the SEC.
Right. Multiple investigations into Tesla.
The FAA overseeing those SpaceX launches. And the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
Keeping a close eye on Tesla's self-driving tech.
So this is where it gets interesting, right?
Yeah.
Could Musk use his position to basically weaken these agencies?
It's possible.
Shield himself and his companies from all that scrutiny?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And it raises some serious concerns about conflicts of interest.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about hypothetical regulations here.
Right.
There are active federal probes and lawsuits involving Musk and his companies.
With some pretty serious allegations.
Oh, yeah. Ranging from safety violations to racial discrimination to securities fraud.
So this isn't just some policy debate. This is about real-world consequences.
Exactly. Real people's lives could be affected.
And what about Tesla's workforce?
Right.
Musk is very publicly anti-union.
He is.
Which aligns with Trump's views.
Perfectly.
So are we going to see a crackdown on unionization efforts at Tesla?
It's certainly possible.
I mean, what would that mean for worker rights?
Yeah, it's a valid concern.
For consumer safety?
Absolutely. And we need to remember that deregulation isn't always a good thing. It can boost innovation in the economy sometimes, but it can also lead to fewer protections for workers and consumers.
And the environment.
Right, exactly. It's a really complex equation.
With potentially huge consequences.
It is.
Speaking of complex relationships.
Yeah.
Let's talk about China.
Okay.
Musk kind of has this delicate dance going on with the Chinese government, doesn't he?
He does. China is Tesla's biggest growth market.
Right.
But there's always this underlying tension, you know, the potential for trade wars.
Still clashes.
Exactly. And we've already seen Musk kind of flip-flop on his stance on those Chinese tariffs.
So he's stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, you could say that.
I mean, tariffs could protect Tesla from Chinese competition.
They could.
But they could also really mess with Tesla's supply chain.
Especially with that Shanghai Gigafactory being one of their most productive.
Yeah.
It's a tough situation.
He's walking a tightrope, that's for sure.
He is.
Okay, let's switch gears for a minute and talk about SpaceX. They're a major player in the space race at this point.
Oh, they are a major player, for sure, bringing in billions from NASA and the Department of Defense.
For things like satellite launches. And that Starlink internet service in Ukraine.
Right.
Well, that Starlink situation in Ukraine is just fascinating.
Yeah, it's almost like something out of a movie.
It's become this lifeline for communications in a war zone.
It really has.
But it also makes me think about the rivalry between SpaceX and Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that whole legal battle over that lunar lander contract?
How could I forget?
Blue Origin was arguing that NASA had unfairly picked SpaceX.
Yeah, as the sole winner for the Artemis lunar lander program.
Right.
They ended up losing that lawsuit.
They did.
But NASA did eventually award Blue Origin a second contract. So
Okay.
they got something.
It still seems like SpaceX has a big advantage, though,
They do.
especially with Trump practically singing their praises.
Yeah. I mean, he even called Musk a new star during his victory speech.
Right. And he highlighted how SpaceX provided all those Starlink terminals after Hurricane Helene.
He did. And that kind of public endorsement from the president could easily translate into even more lucrative government contracts for SpaceX.
I mean, they're already projected to earn over $5 billion a year from those federal contracts.
And that number could skyrocket under a Trump administration.
Wow, that's a lot of money riding on having the president on your side.
It is.
But it also raises questions about whether other companies,
Right.
the ones that aren't headed up by a friend of the president,
Yeah.
are they going to get a fair shot at these contracts?
That's a really valid concern.
Yeah, and it circles back to that larger issue of whether Musk's close ties with Trump
Yeah.
could create an uneven playing field in those industries where his companies operate.
It's something we need to pay attention to.
This is getting pretty deep.
It is.
But I think it's really crucial to understand how these power dynamics could have ripple effects.
Absolutely. It's all connected.
Okay, so let's move on to another area where Musk stands to gain significantly from a Trump presidency.
Okay.
Tesla and the electric vehicle market.
Right.
Tesla's been a big beneficiary of those government policies like regulatory credits.
Yeah, the ones that reward companies for producing low emission or zero emission vehicles.
Right.
And those credits aren't just a nice bonus.
Right.
They make up a significant chunk of Tesla's recent profits.
Really?
Yeah, in the second quarter of 2024, they made up about 60% of their net income.
Wow, that's huge.
It is.
But hold on, wasn't Trump planning to dismantle all those green energy subsidies and programs?
He's talked about it, but it's more complicated than it sounds.
How so?
Well, a lot of those carbon credit markets are actually run by individual states.
Oh, okay.
And they have bipartisan support.
So even for Trump, getting rid of those initiatives might be a bit of a political minefield.
It could be.
What about those electric vehicle tax credits?
Right.
And the grants for building the charging infrastructure? Tesla's benefited from those too, right?
Absolutely. And those are areas where Trump could have a lot more influence.
Okay.
It's interesting, though, because Musk has publicly said that Tesla doesn't need subsidies.
Has he really?
Yeah, he's even claimed that removing them would actually help the company.
Interesting. But wouldn't that also impact Tesla's competitors?
Potentially, yeah.
Maybe even slow down the whole shift towards electric vehicles.
That's the key question, right?
It is.
While Tesla might be strong enough to weather the storm of reduced subsidies,
Yeah.
other EV manufacturers might really struggle.
Right.
And it could put the brakes on the adoption of electric vehicles overall.
That's a big consideration,
It is.
especially with how urgent it is to tackle climate change and move away from those fossil fuels.
Absolutely. It highlights how intricate these policy decisions really are. There are always trade-offs and unintended consequences to consider.
Okay, before we get too lost in the policy weeds, let's talk about something a little more futuristic.
Okay.
Robo-taxis.
Ah, yes. Tesla's big vision of a world full of self-driving taxis.
It's a bold goal,
It is.
and the technology is still under development
For sure.
and facing a ton of regulatory hurdles.
a lot of hurdles.
But here's where the Trump connection gets super interesting again.
Okay.
His team is reportedly putting self-driving regulations at the top of their to-do list.
So they want to speed things up.
Yeah, which could clear the way for Tesla's robo-taxi ambitions.
Imagine if Tesla can overcome those regulatory barriers and get millions of robotaxis on the road.
Yeah,
The financial windfall would be astronomical,
a fleet of self-driving taxis operating 24/7.
generating revenue without the need for human drivers.
It sounds like science fiction,
It does.
but it could be reality sooner than we think.
It could, especially with the president who's eager to embrace this kind of disruptive technology.
It's a prime example of how technology, regulation, and politics are all intertwined.
They are, and this story is just getting started.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have, but there's so much more to explore.
There is, we've just scratched the surface.
We still need to dig into the potential impact on Musk's other ventures
Like Neuralink.
and XAI.
And we need to think about the broader implications for the future of innovation and regulation in the U.S.
Absolutely.
Make sure to come back for part 2, where we'll go even deeper into this fascinating and complex landscape.
It's going to be good. Welcome back to our deep dive on the potential ramifications of that close relationship between Elon Musk and President Trump.
We've already uncovered some pretty interesting links between Musk's ambitions, Trump's policies, and the future of things like space exploration and self-driving cars.
Right. And as we kind of explore this further, it's clear that this goes way beyond just two individuals.
It does.
It's about power dynamics between the government and technology and even the fabric of society.
Yeah, you're right. It's bigger than just these two guys.
Yeah. Last time you were talking about robo-taxes and how a Trump administration might actually speed up the regulations to make them a reality.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial aspect of this whole story, artificial intelligence.
Musk's latest venture, XAI, is all about developing those advanced AI technologies.
And let's not forget about Neuralink,
Oh, right.
his company that's working on those brain-computer interfaces.
Yeah, that one sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It does.
It really does. Both XAI and Neuralink are working in areas that are just ripe for groundbreaking innovation.
Right.
But they also raise some big ethical questions.
So how might a Trump presidency affect the development and regulation of these emerging technologies? I mean, it's tough to even predict what a second Trump term might look like.
It really is. On the one hand, Trump has expressed a lot of enthusiasm for cutting-edge technology and often sees regulation as a roadblock to progress.
But he's also known for taking a pretty protectionist stance on things like trade and national security. So how does that play into AI and brain-computer interfaces?
That's where things get really interesting. You know, with AI and brain-computer interfaces, those concerns about national security and protectionism could become even more amplified. I mean, think about it. There are already really heated debates about AI potentially replacing jobs, creating new ways to surveil people, and even posing these existential risks to humanity.
Yeah, and Neuralink brings up even more questions about privacy, personal autonomy, what it even means to be human.
Right.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is. Imagine a world where our thoughts and emotions could be accessed and manipulated by technology.
Whoa.
That's what Neuralink is working towards.
It is.
And it's a future that needs careful consideration and oversight.
It's exciting and terrifying all at the same time.
It is.
It's really tough to say how a Trump administration would handle these uncharted waters.
Absolutely. This is where the connection between Musk's influence and Trump's political agenda becomes really fascinating.
Okay.
Will Trump listen to Musk's expertise and take a hands-off approach to regulating these new technologies?
Or will he prioritize national security concerns and potentially restrict the development or use of certain AI or Neuralink applications?
I mean, those are the billion-dollar questions. And the answers could have a massive impact on the future of humanity.
No pressure.
Right.
Okay, let's come back down to earth for a minute and talk about something a little more tangible.
Okay.
Money.
Money.
Specifically, the money flowing from government contracts to Musk's companies.
Right.
I mean, we touched on this earlier, but it's worth revisiting.
It is. The financial stakes here are huge.
They are.
As we mentioned, SpaceX is already raking in billions from government contracts.
Right.
And those could easily increase under a Trump administration.
And then there's the potential for Tesla to benefit from those policies related to electric vehicles and self-driving cars.
Absolutely. Not to mention the possibility of XAI securing government contracts related to defense or intelligence work.
It all adds up.
It does.
It seems like Musk is really in a prime position to capitalize on a Trump presidency in multiple ways.
He is, and it raises some flags about potential conflicts of interest and even crony capitalism.
I mean, it's one thing for a company to succeed because of its own merit and innovation.
Yeah. Right.
A whole other thing if that success is due to favoritism and special treatment from the government.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important for journalists, policymakers, everyday people to really keep a close eye on these relationships and hold both Musk and Trump accountable for their actions. Transparency is crucial.
Transparency is essential
in
a democracy.
And we need to make sure that decisions are being made for the benefit of everyone, not just a select few.
Right. And it's important to remember this isn't just about Musk and Trump.
No.
This is a microcosm of a bigger trend that we're seeing both in the U.S. and globally.
Exactly. I'm talking about the increasing concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a small number of individuals and corporations.
Okay.
I mean, this has been happening for decades.
Yeah.
And it's affecting our politics, our economy, our society in profound ways.
So you're saying that the Musk-Trump dynamic is just one example of this larger phenomenon of wealth and power concentration?
Precisely, but it's a particularly striking example because it involves two of the most influential figures of our time operating in industries that are shaping the future of humanity.
It's like we're watching this real-time case study in the complexities of power technology and the challenges of regulating innovation in the 21st century.
It is.
It makes you think about who really benefits from all this technological progress.
Right.
Is it society as a whole, or is it mainly those with the resources and connections to exploit these advancements for their own personal gain?
Those are tough questions, and there are no easy answers, but it's a conversation we need to be having as a society.
Absolutely. We need to be aware of the potential downsides of unchecked power and make sure that technological innovation is guided by ethical principles and a commitment to the common good.
I agree. And, we've talked a lot about the potential benefits and the risks of this Musk-Trump connection, but there's another layer to this story that we haven't really explored yet, the cultural impact.
What do you mean by cultural impact?
Well, both Musk and Trump are these larger-than-life figures, right? I mean, they've cultivated these huge followings, and they're constantly in the spotlight. Their actions and words have this power to influence public opinion, affect how people spend their money, even reshape what's considered acceptable behavior in our society.
So it's not just about policies and regulations.
No.
It's about the messages they're sending and the example they're setting.
Exactly. Take Musk, for instance. His outspokenness on social media, his willingness to take risks, and his challenges to conventional thinking have made him a hero to a lot of people, especially in the tech world.
But he's also been called out for sometimes being reckless, for not caring enough about worker rights, and for over-promising and under-delivering on his projects. Yeah. There always seem to be two sides to the story with him.
And Trump, of course, is even more polarizing. I mean, his aggressive style is disregard for facts, and his willingness to exploit divisions in society have alienated a lot of people.
True, but he's also tapped into a deep sense of resentment and anger among those who feel forgotten or left behind by globalization, technological advancements, and changes in culture.
So when you combine these two figures, you get this potent mix of ambition, disruption, and controversy. And their relationship's impact reaches far beyond just politics and business.
It's fascinating to consider how their actions and words might shape the cultural landscape in the years to come. I mean, do you think this duo is going to change how we view success or innovation?
It's certainly possible, and it highlights how important critical thinking and media literacy are in today's world.
Yeah.
Information spreads so quickly.
It does.
And these powerful individuals have huge platforms to shape public opinion.
We need to be smart about the information we consume.
Yes.
We need to be willing to question what we hear, challenge those narratives that are presented to us, and engage in these thoughtful conversations about the future we want to create.
You're absolutely right. And on that note, I think we've reached a good point to wrap up part 2 of our deep dive.
Sounds good. Make sure to stick around for part 3, where we'll explore the global implications of this power dynamic and consider some possible scenarios that could unfold in the years ahead. Okay, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into this whole Elon Musk-Trump alliance.
It's been quite a journey.
We've talked about the potential conflicts of interest, the cultural impact.
Right.
But this isn't just an American story, is it?
No, it's definitely not. Musk's companies have a global reach, and Trump's America First approach has impacts all over the world.
It does.
Take trade, for example.
Okay.
Trump's known for those tariffs and trade wars, especially with China.
Right, and we already talked about how Musk has this delicate balancing act going on with China.
He does?
He needs China for Tesla's growth.
Right.
But he's also talked about concerns about Chinese competition and fair trade. So what happens when you add a Trump presidency back into the mix?
Well, it puts Musk in a tricky spot.
It does.
He has to juggle his business interests with the political realities of a Trump administration and the overall geopolitical landscape, which is getting more and more complex every day.
It's like he's walking a tightrope between two superpowers.
He is, and the stakes are enormous, not just for Musk, but for the global economy.
Absolutely. Okay, and then there's the elephant in the room.
Climate change.
Climate change is arguably the biggest challenge we face as a planet.
It is.
And Musk, through Tesla and his push for electric vehicles and solar, has tried to position himself as a leader in clean energy.
He has.
But then you have Trump, who has a long record of denying climate science and dismantling those environmental regulations.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast.
So is Musk going to try to use his influence to soften Trump's stance on climate change?
That's the big question. Will he put his business interests first and stay quiet on this crucial issue?
Or will he use his platform to advocate for a more sustainable future, even if it means disagreeing with the president?
It's a tough call.
It is a question of values and priorities. Will profit be more important than the planet?
Right. Or will Musk use his influence to push for something bigger? It really makes you wonder what Musk's ultimate goal is here.
Yeah, what's his end game? What does he envision for the future?
That's a question that only he can answer. But if we look at his past actions and statements, it seems like he's driven by this relentless ambition to push the limits of technology and innovation.
I mean, he's talked about colonizing Mars, merging humans with AI, solving some of the world's most complex problems.
It's ambitious stuff.
It's pretty audacious. Some might even say it's science fiction.
Yeah.
But you can't deny the impact he's had.
No, you can't.
He's revolutionized the car industry, disrupted the space industry, pushed the boundaries of what's possible with AI.
But will all this progress come at a price? Will his innovations truly benefit humanity as a whole?
Right. Or will they just serve to make him even richer and more powerful?
It's something to think about, and it brings us back to the core of this whole deep dive of the intersection of ambition, technology, and what the future holds for society.
I think we've explored the potential benefits and the risks of this Musk-Trump connection.
We have
Looked at the economic, the political, and the cultural implications of this whole dynamic.
Yeah.
And even considered the global ramifications of their choices.
We've covered a lot of ground, and while we can't predict the future,
Right.
hopefully we've gained a deeper understanding of the forces at play in our world.
I think so. At the end of the day, it's up to each of us to decide what kind of future we want.
Right.
Will we embrace these technological advancements while also holding on to our values and protecting our planet?
Or will we let ambition and greed chart the course of human history?
Those are the questions we all need to be asking ourselves.
The answers will determine the fate of generations to come.
That's a great point. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope we've given you something to think about
We hope so.
and inspired you to engage in these crucial conversations about the future we're all building together.
Yeah.